league sources, Weatherspoon had lost the locker room because of a culture that catered to the needs of a few players.
When Caitlin Clark was no longer present on the NCAA women's basketball stage, the drop in viewership wasn't just steep, it was staggering. A 71% drop in Final Four ratings equated to over 10 million fewer people watching the games, and that isn't a fluke or coincidence. It's a glaring sign of how one transcendent athlete can define the reach, interest, and cultural relevance of an entire sport. Paige Bueckers, the UConn star many expected to carry the mantle after Clark, has suddenly found herself in the middle of this narrative, and the numbers are not doing her any favors. This is not to say Bueckers isn't a phenomenal player, she is. But the public's engagement, or lack thereof, after Clark's departure signals something deeper about stardom in women's sports and what it truly takes to move the needle. The 2024 NCAA Final Four was expected to shine. It had the historic powerhouse UConn. It had storylines. It had talent. Yet when UConn met UCLA, a mere 4.1 million people tuned in. The year before, when Caitlin Clark led Iowa against UConn, over 14.2 million people watched. That's a jaw-dropping loss of 10.1 million viewers, and it sent shockwaves through sports media, advertisers, and television networks. Clark, a name now synonymous with women's basketball, had drawn in a new wave of casual fans who disappeared the moment she wasn't on the court. What makes this more impactful is that this wasn't an isolated data point. Both semi-final games suffered similar drops in ratings. This isn't about team popularity. It isn't even about traditional basketball rivalries. It's about one player. The phrase, Caitlin Clark power, has become almost literal. Her ability to pull in viewers has made even basketball fans question what drives engagement in the women's game, and the uncomfortable answer seems to be that right now, it's her. Critics have attempted to claim that Angel Reese made Caitlin Clark popular, that it was the rivalry between them that fueled the fanfare. But the data says otherwise. Clark games, with or without Reese, consistently doubled the viewership of any other women's college basketball games. In fact, her Elite Eight appearance alone drew 10 million viewers, more than most men's tournament games in the same round. To put this in context, 10 million people is more than the entire population of New York City. It's the equivalent of filling every NFL stadium in the country at once, and still having millions left over. That type of gravitational pull is not normal. It's not built. It's born. And for women's basketball, it's something the sport has long awaited. The comparison is historical, not just statistical. We've seen this before in the NBA. When Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the league in the late 70s and early 80s, they elevated the NBA from obscurity to prime time. Television ratings surged. Advertisers finally saw value in investing. Fans who never watched basketball began to care. And then came Michael Jordan, whose rise didn't just sustain that popularity, it supercharged it. The NBA went global because Jordan wasn't just a player. He was a brand, an icon, and an ambassador of entertainment. Caitlin Clark now sits at that same threshold for women's basketball. Her style, a blend of Steph Curry's limitless shooting range and Magic Johnson's court vision, is rare. Her ability to thread passes through traffic, launch logo threes with confidence, and play with a swagger that feels both earned and electric has made her appointment viewing. The people tuning in for Clark weren't all basketball aficionados. Many were casual fans, first-time watchers, or even people who had never watched a women's basketball game before. And yet, they watched her. They stayed up late. They filled bars. They changed viewing habits. This wasn't just niche fandom, it was a cultural moment. The drop-off following her exit isn't a condemnation of other players like Paige Bueckers, but it is a reality check. Bueckers is incredibly talented, but as of now, she doesn't move the needle like Clark does. There's a difference between being great and being generational. Clark is generational. What compounds this narrative is the discussion around casual fans. As media experts often say, hardcore fans are loyal, but they don't drive growth. Casual fans are the lifeblood of any sports expansion. Clark didn't just keep existing fans interested, she brought in millions of new ones. She gave people who had no reason to care a reason to show up. That's the power of a transcendent athlete. Her absence not only reduced the viewership, it exposed just how much of that viewership was directly tied to her. One commenter, in a discussion thread shared in the video, sarcastically noted that the cult of Caitlin didn't actually care about women's basketball. But the truth is, they care about excellence. They care about spectacle. And Clark provided that better than anyone in recent memory. It's not unlike what happened when Michael Jordan retired. Ratings plummeted. Fans drifted. The league needed a new face, a new energy, and a new reason for people to care. That's what the women's game now faces. Without Clark, the lights dimmed, even if the talent remained. Yet, amidst the panic, there's optimism too. Because even with a 71% drop, the remaining viewership for this year's tournament was still significantly higher than anything seen before the Clark era. Before she burst onto the scene, women's college basketball was struggling for mainstream visibility. Games were buried on obscure networks. Highlights rarely went viral. Social media chatter was minimal. Clark changed all that. She didn't just draw attention, she raised the floor for the sport. Even after she left, the residual attention she created was still better than what the game used to generate. That's her legacy, and that's the long-term effect of her star power. Like Magic and Bird did before Jordan, she expanded the reach and reshaped the narrative. And now, the sport faces its crossroads. The conversation becomes, who's next? Can someone like Paige Bueckers rise to that level? Can Angel Reese, with her charisma and physicality, keep the audience engaged? What about younger stars like Juju Watkins? The pipeline is full of talent, but talent alone isn't enough. The sport needs personas, narratives, rivalries, and drama. Clark delivered all of that. If the rest of the field can do the same, the growth will continue. If not, we may be looking at a temporary spike instead of a lasting movement. Still, there's reason to hope. The infrastructure around women's college basketball has improved. More games are nationally televised. More athletes have nil deals. Merchandise sales are booming. Social media is buzzing with highlight clips and debates. Clark may have been the spark, but others can carry the flame if the moment is seized correctly. Women's basketball now has its AC and BC eras, after Caitlin and before Caitlin. The BC era was niche. The AC era is national. That is her imprint, and it's irreversible. As the video notes in closing, sports need transcendent figures to thrive. Clark was that and more. But the goal now isn't to replicate her, it's to let others rise using the platform she built. The question is whether they're ready, and whether the institutions behind them are ready to embrace what comes next. Because the audience is there. They showed up. They just need a reason to stay. And for a short time, Caitlin Clark gave them that reason. What happens next will determine whether her impact becomes a footnote in women's basketball history, or the foundation of a new era.